last year about what, $799 million? Do you even know how much money that is? I can't even begin to conceptualize $799 million. She started at the local level with Walmart, and so she has both this just really rich level of experience of working with local nonprofits at the local level, the state level, at the national level. Both at the foundation working with national media, but also working with nonprofits on helping them access the funds and maximizing their presence and maximizing the work of the funds. And so that's what's really exciting to me about having Kelly here. She's also one of the very few sanctioned Walmart Twitterers. Tweeters.
Just such an intro.
And you can, what are you saying mean about me back there? And you can, her Twitter handle is Walmart Kelly, in case you want to say one of the things about her life. I had dinner with her last night, and she's really enjoyable, and her presentation today is going to be really, really fabulous. And I think that you will learn a lot from the experiences.
I'm going to come up. All right. Thank you. Thank you. That was such a nice, sweet. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. Man, that was a tough act to follow. That was like the best intro ever. So thank you for having me. I'll say, like, I'm feeling a little bit nervous, which I'm not normally nervous, but I thought about this a lot, and I prepared a lot, and I actually have a lot of friends who work at nonprofits and in communications and development, and I probably called 10 of them this week, and they were like, "Geez, man, stop worrying. You're gonna be fine. Like, you don't need to freak out." But I just knew if you guys were making this investment of your time and your day here, and having a lot of friends that work in the nonprofit sector, and knowing how budgets are tight, time is tight, you guys are doing more than ever with limited resources, that if you were taking the day to be here, I wanted it to be worthwhile and not like, oh great, thanks Walmart for sending somebody who didn't prepare. So I really did give a lot of thought. I'm going to come around and I'm going to advance my own slides, so I'll kind of speak from over here. But as Beth said, or excuse me, Debbie said, I am on Twitter as Walmart Kelly, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I think it's a nice way to intro. And I know everybody, from what Debbie said at dinner last night, is in different places in what you guys do in social media. By the way, my hair is so much darker in that picture. I know everybody's like, that's not her. It's an imposter. I think she's wearing a wig. It's not a wig. It's just gotten lighter over the years. But I started this a couple years ago, and it was an opportunity. I think you could probably relate or understand that with Walmart, we're such a large company, and there's a lot of perceptions about the company. And when we were kind of dipping our toe into social media and doing things online, we definitely wanted to start the traditional at Walmart handle, and we have at Walmart specials, and they talk about deals. And I think whether you're a nonprofit or a business, everybody got to this point where you started grappling a little bit, like, should we be generic Walmart, or should we have like a face to the company that sort of represents a little bit about what we're doing and what we're about, and what a real person feels like walking in the doors of Walmart every day. And somehow out of, you know, a home office campus of like 14,000 people, that they chose me to do that, and I feel really honored. But I also felt terrified, and I wanted to say that because I know that depending on where you're at in social media and doing stuff digitally with your organizations, you may also be feeling that same amount of kind of worry and terror, like, am I gonna mess this up? Like, are people gonna like me? We have like, reporters from the New York Times and Reuters and, that follow this account, and I would like be like, pressing it on my phone and like rereading everything and being like, am I gonna get, called by like investor relations because I released something I wasn't supposed to or something. So there's like terrifying, and like this New York Times reporter will see it or something. And so I've definitely relaxed over the years as I've like gotten into it more and more. But I would say if any of you guys are at that point, don't let that be a barrier of entry, like fear that you might mess up, because mess ups happen. We're all people, and that's kind of part of what's good about social media is it connects people, and you give people a little bit of grace, hopefully, just as you do in life. I did, just because I wanted to find any way to get my new puppy in the slides, I did tweet the other day that I did practice this presentation in front of him a couple of times. That was the result. I hope none of you guys fall asleep today. If you feel like you're going to fall asleep, maybe like splash some water on your face or something. So before I go into like the actual slides, I did also wanted to point out that one of my colleagues is here, Daniel Morales. I'm going to make him stand up because I want to embarrass him. But Daniel's here, and he actually is like Mr. Texas. So he went to school in San Antonio, lives in Houston now, but he's actually the local Walmart media director for this area. He's in this area a lot. And I think when Debbie said, you know, we give $799 million globally, I hope a lot of you guys who are in development thought, ka-ching, oh my gosh. And I'm going to call Daniel out because he works a lot on the state giving here. And so he's a great person to know. And I'm glad that he's here with me today. So speaking of messing up, this is like, Red Cross is a major partner of us. There might be somebody from a Red Cross chapter locally in the room. And I just wanted to call this out because that is a huge fear that I hear from nonprofits. And when we talk to our nonprofit partners, which we have tons, and part of my role is to be on the phone with them every day talking about how they're going to promote grants that we gave them and things like that. This is like one of the most famous case studies that's kind of out there. And I'm sure you guys, maybe some of you have seen it. The Red Cross, there's a program that you can use, and like I use my one on my phone, where you can tweet and you can switch in between accounts all the time on Twitter. And this happened where somebody, a media manager who everybody adores at the Red Cross, and they love her, and I think she didn't get fired as a result of this, she still works there. She tweeted from Red Cross thinking it was her own. It's like everybody's biggest fear. Like, it's what I dream about at night, like that I'm gonna tweet from Walmart Kelly something about like, you know, laser hair removal or something. So it's like everybody's biggest fear, but this was such a good recovery. And as somebody who funds Red Cross, when I saw this recovery, it made me want to fund Red Cross more. It made me want to say, I love them, they're human, they didn't freak out, they didn't retreat. I know a lot of you guys, you know, have boards and people that you have to report to, and if you thought that you were going to mess up like this, you might think like, I couldn't face my board the next day, but they handled this so gracefully. So she obviously tweeted about drinking from the Red Cross. She later tweeted from her own account that was embarrassing. And then they did like just the best toned message. They said we deleted the rogue tweet, which on Twitter, a lot of you probably know, you can't really delete a tweet. You can delete it from your stream, but it lives. And so they were right to kind of call it, they deleted it. And then this is the best response ever, but rest assured, the Red Cross is sober and we've confiscated the keys. Like, so amazing. And then they later blogged about it. And what I love is they say, well, we're a 130-year-old humanitarian organization. We're also made up of human beings. And that became so clear. CNN covered this, Fortune covered this, AOL covered this. It increased donations to the Red Cross. The beer company that she tweeted about did something in their pubs where for every pint of blood that you proved that if you went in and you said we donated blood, they gave a pint of blood. Did you have a question? Yay! I love the Red Cross. But it was, yeah, it was an amazing thing, and it ended up being a funding opportunity, and it raised the visibility, and I think they got more followers on their Red Cross account because of it. And I'm not saying like, I don't want you guys to go out and start crafting some awesome plan to like tweet something bad. But if it happens, I think the takeaway is don't freak out. We're all human. And also if you see somebody tweet something or put something online that they probably didn't mean to, give them grace too, because you know we all make mistakes. Speaking of mistakes, so we at Walmart have made some mistakes of our own. And I think when you're such a large company, it can be, when you worry like how the success of something is gonna go, that can be sometimes like what holds you back. So we'll spend months considering what kind of platforms we wanna, do we wanna start this blog? What would the response be to this blog? Like how many blog posts do we do a week? I mean, we think about it so much because we want it to go well. And we've had some things that have totally fallen flat. When we launched our $2 billion commitment to hunger relief, we had this awesome idea. We had about 5 million fans on Facebook at that point, and we worked with the Facebook team and we said, we want to do this awesome thing where our fans could share a plate on their wall that would represent hunger. It would have our Fighting Hunger Together logo. And every plate that was shared, like if you posted on your wall and said, I shared this plate from Walmart, they're giving one meal for every plate that was shared. And we like got the foundation, we worked with the foundation, they were like, okay, we'll spend up to $250,000 to purchase meals through this. we were like, yes, this is gonna go viral. This is gonna be amazing. Like, I think the plate got shared 200 times. So we were like, wah, wah, wah. Like, you're just like, oh, you know, like we did all the creative. And I know that that's even a bigger deal when you guys do it, because being a nonprofit, putting the money into it, you know, it's a huge budgetary thing. And then when it falls flat, you're like, oh, I wasted all this money and this time. And so when we face that, we have tested things, tried it, failed, learned from it, and gone on to other iterations of it. And I think that that's been key in digital, is to not say, oh, we had one failed campaign, let's just like retreat from it and go back to only doing, you know, table events where we're gonna fundraise, or we're gonna only do big check presentations from here on out. Like, it's important to kind of keep going. And I think as things evolve, you just find the better way to interact with the people online who are following you. So with that in mind, I wanted to talk a little bit about this campaign, which actually was kind of the next thing that we did. And we went from kind of failing to like all in. And we did this huge campaign on Facebook last holiday where, this is a screen grab from it, but through our hunger relief program, we picked the communities that were in the top 100 of having the highest hunger rates in America. And one of the things that we committed to as a foundation was that we were going to try to help raise awareness of the issue, because there's some communities where hunger is very apparent and people know that people are struggling. And then there's some places that it may be your neighbor, it may be the people you work with, and because of the economic times, if they're behind on their mortgage, you may not think that they're going hungry or they're having to access a food bank, but it's happening. And we wanted to help raise awareness of that. And so the 100 communities were highlighted. We worked with a variety of nonprofits, and basically the community that got the most likes and shares on Facebook would win $1 million, and the runners-up, there was 5, would each get $100,000. It's not unlike what other companies have done, and there's more and more companies, as you guys know, that are doing these types of campaigns online. What we learned from it was putting the communities, highlighting them. Actually, we worried, and we did a lot of soul searching on this if it was the right thing, because we didn't want to upset any mayors. We didn't want to upset any government officials by calling out their city. Like, nobody wants to be, I think Fresno at this point was the hungriest, and nobody wants to be Fresno, you know, and we didn't want to like call anybody out or hurt anybody by just calling them out. So we thought about it a lot, but we did it in the right way. And the fan response, I think around this time we had about 7 million fans on Facebook. The fan response was unbelievable. The comments were largely positive. It helped raise awareness of the issue. There were 10 million votes cast during the 6-week campaign, which is a huge impression of people that continued to engage with the contest, I guess you could call it. It got national and local media attention, and I think what was important was actually more the local media attention. So in the communities where they started emerging at the top, the nonprofits that were heavily involved, like United Way and in some cases the food banks, and just other people that in the community who really spearheaded it, they would go on the local media to tell people like, hey, we're like 6th, and if we move up one more, we're like going to be in the running to get $100,000. Like, please vote tonight, and it'd be on the local news. And then what we were hearing back indirectly, which was the really cool part, was that if that soup kitchen representative was kind of like the spearheading of the community, she would say, oh, well, not only did we get some votes and we moved up in the campaign, but 5 people called me to come volunteer because they saw me on the news and they thought it was really cool and they wanted to come out this holiday and help out. And so Salt Lake, which actually ended up winning, and I'll go to their next slide, they saw a huge increase in the amount of donations that they received. And I know obviously a lot of you guys think digital, how can I help with development? And I know you guys will look at like your own apps to do or own campaigns to potentially do development online, but getting involved in these type of company campaigns can sometimes indirectly do that, because if there is local media and if you do kind of raise awareness of your organization, then indirectly people will potentially donate more. And that's what happened in the case of the Utah Food Bank. They, you know, food banks typically get a lot of food and get a lot of donations during the holiday season, but they reported back to us that they doubled what they normally got because there was so much visibility for them in the community during the time of this campaign. This was also just a neat thing to call out. I've never seen a nonprofit partner do this, but through some of the funding that they got, as a result of this, they did 2 billboards in the Salt Lake community, really thanking the community who actually voted and were kind of a part, and we just thought that was really, you know, neat and tastefully done, and really celebrated the community and their efforts. So that was our Facebook campaign, and I think just the other thing we learned from it is that there are certain things that just resonate well, and we listened a lot during the campaign. So that's a key. We have about 9 million Facebook fans now, 9.7. And the key thing that we do, and it can be a huge challenge, is we try to listen to a lot of what they're telling us and then move in that direction. So it turns out that hunger, in particular for our fans, and I think what they're facing and kind of everything that's going on in the US economy, it resonates really well anytime we're kind of helping hunger and basic needs. And we've sort of learned that from listening to our fans, which has been important. So this slide in my mind was kind of entitled Getting Beyond the Big Check, and I just like did a Google image search for Walmart check, and like 10,000 pictures showed up, because we are like admittedly the kings and queens of like getting big checks out there. Like Debbie said, I started out at the local level working with nonprofits, and I was like the girl making the big checks back in the day, and then now I'm the girl sometimes giving the big checks. And so the events with the checks there's totally a time and place for them, but we found a lot of our nonprofit partners moving beyond that and actually lowering costs, because sometimes when you do the big check event and you have to get the podium and you get the chairs and you set up the event, it's a time suck, and it also, you know, it costs a lot of money to rent that equipment, and you may or may not get media attention there, and so, you know, the ROI sometimes is little. While I think the big check will always exist, this is a great example here. We donated a refrigerated food truck to the Greater Boston Food Bank. And they did hold a little event when the truck arrived, but instead of doing the big rental and the big parade and trying to get the mayor there, they actually took it online to their Facebook page, showed a picture of the truck, said, Walmart gave us this truck, we want you, our fans, to help us name it, because that's kind of something they do with the trucks. And they ran this campaign, and the local media ended up picking it up, and it was on the local TV station, like go to their page and help them name this truck from Walmart. And to us, even though we love to come out to an event, it was actually cooler. It was like more fun to see the fans engage on their page and tell them what they wanted the truck to be named. And as a result, we sort of put that in a best practice toolkit, and we give trucks a lot. And other cities have done that, and it continues to go really well, and people feel like they have kind of a stake in the game with that truck now, and it kind of just takes the whole donation to a different level, and actually cuts their costs because it's all digital. So you may think about doing that as you receive, you know, your own donations, if it is something that you could tangibly name, or kind of put a face to your fans on Facebook or through Twitter or on your blog. It's just a neat way to do that. This is the Montgomery County Food Bank. They also got a truck. And what I liked about this is YouTube. I don't know how many of you guys are using it, but when the media doesn't, you know, everybody's worst fear, you put together this media event, you want to do great donor recognition for whoever gave you money, and then no media shows up, and you're like, I got to report back that no media showed up. Like, you know, how's the donor going to feel? To us, it's like media shows up, it doesn't show up, you know, it's okay. But what they did in this case is they have started staging their own kind of mock interviews, and they have a staff person that I think has like a former reporting background. And so she will be at the event, and so regardless of whether the media shows up, she will interview the executive director almost in a way that a news story would go, and then they post it on their YouTube channel. This one has 220 views. I would argue that like that living there and getting that many views is actually more of an impression than seeing a 30-second news clip about it, and it lives for a lot longer. And you could link it in other things. If you send out a thank you email to like an influencer list that you have of other donors or other people that volunteer, you can link to it and say, hey, go watch this YouTube video about the donation. And so it's something that ends up living on a little bit longer than your traditional you know, event or thing like that. So next slide, I wanted to just talk about, again, just what I think we've found and just kind of some of the best practices. And this is totally 100% for our base of followers on Facebook. So I know everybody's different, but I would argue that with, you know, 9 million, we have a pretty good sample size of just a bunch of different people. And so it's a pretty good case study on just kind of what generally works and generally doesn't. So we do listen a lot. Up on the right-hand side of this slide, there's a poll, and we do that a lot, and it's something that's not that hard to set up. And we will ask our fans, like in this case it was, we tell you a lot about the nonprofits we support with money. Where do you guys spend your time volunteering? We'd love to hear about more organizations that you guys are supporting. And there's 1,700 comments on that. So, that's a huge amount of people telling us where they volunteer and what they think. So we definitely try to stay humble. I think, especially when you're on the side where you're giving money as a foundation, you don't want to seem like you're beating your chest and like you're the big, like you're sending out all these millions. So there's a really important tone that we like to strike, and we work consistently to see the posts, write the posts in a way that, while it would highlight the Red Cross donation, it'd be more about the actual supplies. And so how we do that is, instead of usually calling out like it was a $5 million donation, we'll actually say it purchased 10 pallets of water. It purchased, a truckload of peanut butter and jelly and bread. And that way it comes across as more of like the need, and a little bit more humble than saying, what up, we gave $5 million, what'd you do today? And that's not how we want to come across, not at all. We also, so building trust has a lot to do, if you guys start a Facebook page, if you have one already, if you're on Twitter, if you're thinking about it, I think the biggest thing you would be a disservice to yourself and your organization is to start one without kind of going all in on it, and then having it kind of grow up and you're not really monitoring it that much, and then you go back later and you realize you haven't looked at it for a week and you've had 15 people ask you questions there and it's been radio silence. Because there is a certain aspect of everything online that's about trust, and if you are not responding, if you're kind of being flaky, if you're not really like engaging with the fans, they're not going to respect you, and they're not going to trust what you have to say. And so it's important that if you do it, I would encourage you to like have staff dedicated to it. Even sometimes on days where my day is really busy, what I do with Twitter, I do sometimes look at it on my phone, and that way if I'm going from meeting to meeting, I can just kind of look and see what's happening. But I also like set 10 minutes in the morning that I look at it quickly, and 10 minutes in the evening. And that way I hopefully don't miss anybody throughout the day that may have asked me a question about why did my store close, or why did they not accept my coupon today, or something like that, and I can get back to them. Images are really important. So we find, at least with our fans, that it's really, really important to tell a story by putting a photo with it. You'll see a lot of these, status updates. This one on the bottom is like, our associates were volunteering this holiday, where are you guys volunteering? And we usually try to put a photo with the story, and that just, they can see all these analytics on the backside of Facebook, and it always performs better, the click-throughs and the interest, if we do a photo, a video, or actually a news story. And it doesn't have to be a national news story. And in fact, the more local, which is the next point, is better. So I would say for you guys in San Antonio, if you have a page, if you have a blog, if you're engaging with people online, and somebody from the local media writes about you, post to that. People love to like see that, and it always, the click-through on news stories are always really awesome. Let's see. Other resources I wanted to call out. We do work a lot with Facebook, and I didn't know this existed until about a week ago when I was meeting with somebody from Facebook who is in Bentonville, and she was like, oh, do you ever tell like the nonprofits you work with that we have this facebook.com/nonprofits, and it is an interface on Facebook that is a guide for nonprofits. It's somewhat is about selling some of their, telling you about how you could buy a reach block ad or certain types of ads. But there's also, if you see over on the blue nonprofits guide, there's a guide that you can download from that page. And I actually thought that was a little bit less about anything sales related and had a little bit more useful information. And there's also case studies. So in this case, there were some case studies about how other nonprofits had used Facebook. So that could be a resource. Debbie and I were talking about this last night. We were talking about just interns, and if you were really just kind of at a level where you want to do something with your organization online, but you just feel like you're not the right person to spearhead it. I was saying, we found that a lot of nonprofits across the country have really benefited from getting an intern from a college in communications who wants to kind of do this stuff for them and get them started. And I don't know what the pool is here to really get people like that who are pretty savvy, but this sparked.com site, we've actually had them present, we've seen them, and it's just an amazing site where we talked about how many people are kind of waste time online at night, like you're following hashtags about TV shows that you're watching, and watching the Rangers game last night and following along and watching like Killing Time, watching what people are saying about the game. This micro volunteering site is basically, if you're doing it, you're sitting there and you're like, oh my gosh, I've wasted so much time tonight. You can go on and get a very small volunteer project by signing up and telling them what your skills are. So if you speak Spanish, you can put that on your profile, and then they'll email you opportunities where if a nonprofit that's small, that doesn't have the money, needs somebody to translate a brochure into Spanish, they email you and say, do you want to sign up for this? And then you can kind of help them. And so less so on like your guys' skill set, but more so just know there's people out there, professionals, like people who have PR backgrounds, who have marketing backgrounds, who can translate your brochures. And if you go on this site and put up the project, people will kind of apply to help you, and then it's a free way to get stuff done, and it may be more effective than some of the internships here. And then the last thing is follow key leaders on Twitter. And actually I would say like go to my Facebook page, or excuse me, Twitter page. I bet Debbie's would be a good, anybody that's kind of like up and happening. I think based on who they follow, I would just follow the same type of people if it seems like it's the type of nonprofits or, you know, philanthropic leaders. I, for example, follow a lot of people that do social media for consulting for philanthropy, and they're constantly tweeting articles. And even if you're not tweeting yourself, it's like you're doing yourself, it's almost like having an RSS feed of news all day in your stream of advice. And you know, just go to some of those as you see leaders emerge. There's companies that do this, by the way, that will pay to like map out leaders and clout scores and things. You don't need to do, like, go to people that you know have really like high influence and they're doing a lot of stuff digitally, whether it's Mashable or whether it's very philanthropic focused, and see who they're following and follow the same people, and then weed them out after a week if you don't like what they tweet about, and keep them in if you find it useful. But it's a way to just see what other people are talking about, and I get ideas all the time from seeing what some of the leaders nationally, statewide, and locally are talking about on Twitter. And I just wanted to tease this. That's all I have for today, but I did want to say that like in years past, this holiday season we will have a way, and it hasn't been announced so I can't say too much, but we will have a way to again give grants to local level nonprofits. It's not like the Facebook hunger campaign that I shared where you'd be liking, but there is going to be an activation on Facebook. So I would say if you're not following and liking Walmart's Facebook page, you should, and keep a lookout because we'd love to give some money in San Antonio this holiday. So thank you. And I wanted to leave, I think we have time for questions. So if anybody has any questions. Okay, good. No questions? Woo, bye. Just kidding. Yes, go ahead.
Rumors or something that you haven't been around?
Yes, and we do. Yeah, so we have, as you can imagine, with Walmart and then 9.7 million people, but also just people that aren't even necessarily liking us but can engage with our wall. We certainly have, I mean, I actually was just looking at the Facebook wall like 10 minutes before this, and there's this, I don't know that I would call them negative campaigns, but there's certainly things that people write negative, whether they like the company or they don't like the company or how they feel about us. Our policy is 100% to be transparent about that and to not delete that type of stuff off of our wall. So we have a usage guideline, and if it's profanity or like an actual threat that would be like, and you know, I'm gonna kill somebody at Walmart, or, you know, I mean, not that that's ever happened, but something crazy, we would certainly follow our policy, and if somebody gets mad that it got deleted, we'll point to that policy and say it's very clear in our user guidelines that you put profanity on the wall and we don't keep that there. But otherwise, we do believe that it's the right thing to keep any type of comments, and we listen to them, you know. So if it is something negative, but it's because somebody had a bad customer experience, we want to know about it. That's why we're there. And if that happens, then we try to find out as much as we can about it and address it. And it's actually been a really interesting way to sort of see what some of people's feedback about in the store experience can be. And so it's actually a positive thing to hear. Any other questions? Yeah.
So to clarify, does Walmart have a separate foundation Facebook page, or do you intermingle the nonprofit things that you do with your regular corporate Facebook page for Walmart?
Yeah, we do. It's all one. And so a certain amount of, you know, whenever we have anything that we feel like we want to talk about for our foundation, we just coordinate really closely and put that on the main Walmart page. And we actually find that, you know, people follow us for a variety of different reasons. Some people really want to hear about just specials and product rollbacks and things like that. And then some people really want to hear about philanthropic and what we're doing you know, kind of reputationally and in the live better space. And so when we do that, it's interesting to watch, like, some fans consistently migrate towards specials, and then some fans consistently migrate towards hearing positive news stories or news stories about what we're doing in sustainability and in the foundation and things like that. But they're all together. We did, and actually this is like interesting, we started with a Walmart Giving Twitter handle separate from our @Walmart handle, and we thought that people who are following the @Walmart maybe would rather have the philanthropic stuff come from a different handle. And this is, again, kind of the try it, test it, learn from it, change it. We kept that up for probably a year and a half, and it really became apparent that people who are following @Walmart expected us to tweet some about our foundation from there, and kind of wondered where that information was from. And then people on Walmart Giving who followed them were starting to interact more with @Walmart, and so it became a really clear that we should transition the two and just make it into one, so that @Walmart Giving no longer tweets. But that was an interesting learning, just about how you migrate one amount of followers into a new account. And so there's kind of some best practices around that we learned.
I know this may sound like a little bit sausage making, but that particular decision, what were the analytics that you used to come to that conclusion?
So we have some ways that we can see, because we have a variety of accounts, we can see on the back end who follows which accounts. There was so much crossover that people that were following @Walmart Giving were also following @Walmart, that was the biggest determination. It's like, we don't necessarily need to be tweeting in both places if 75% or more of the people following @Walmart Giving are also following @Walmart. And so you just had to kind of look at that, analyze it, and then decide how to best migrate. So there's basically, you know, it's not rocket science, but like a week out before we closed it, we started saying, for foundation news, start following @Walmart. And the feedback was nobody said, I don't want to follow @Walmart, I only want to follow @Walmart Giving for foundation stuff. Everybody was like, went over, and it was pretty smooth. Debbie, did you have a question?
I had a question. Did you get any, I'm just curious, did you get any feedback on the Facebook hunger campaign in terms of it being a popularity contest? Is there any, I mean,
Yeah.
there have been a lot of campaigns lately that have that feel to it, and I'm wondering if there's a growing sense of that still being okay or not okay.
We didn't, and I'll tell you why I think that didn't come up, because we had really strong language that we used a third-party list to pull, like, it wasn't our list or it wasn't our data that pulled the cities, so we were able to point in the upfront language that we used a third party, really the Food Research and Action Center's list of the hungriest communities. What we did here that was probably on the negative, just kind of like the criticism, was that there was communities that weren't listed because they weren't in the top 100.
No, I'm talking about the voting being from the likes.
Oh, like
Voting
people.
being based on likes.
Yeah, no, we didn't have, I mean, I think it just sort of was a positive thing, and communities that got really involved, and we probably more so just heard that, that, you know, there was, I think, just communities that were hurt that they didn't see Walmart giving them the chance to try to rise up because they weren't in the top 100. And so we added in a component where they could tell us about their community and that we would consider them for a grant on the back end. And then the foundation grant makers actually got all those submissions and reviewed them to give grants, because we did feel like we didn't want to upset anybody because they weren't on the list up front, but not from the liking component. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you guys so much. And I did want to say that, you know, because I am on Twitter, if you have I know how it can happen. I always think of something when I'm drying my hair. It's like my #1 place where ideas come. So like, if you're drying your hair, you're at home later and you're like, oh, I wish I would have asked her that, just tweet me, we can talk, and I'm happy to answer questions. So thank you.